Hi, I'm Cathy. I have no idea what my life is going to look like 1 year from now, and neither do you. And I'm going to share my experience of dealing with chronic stress of living with a spouse that's been dealing with cancer for the last 30 years. And the takeaway that I want you to get from this video is to really cherish every moment that you have, because life can change in the blink of an eye. And it's really, really important when you're going through such difficult times to find a way that you can just be present and not think about the past or worry too much about the future. And that's not an easy thing to do. But in today's video, I'm going to share some coping mechanisms that help me, and hopefully they can help you as well. So just briefly, before I get into the video, I am not giving you any medical advice. This video is intended for entertainment purposes, we'll say. This is my experience. This is what I found worked for me. I really, really highly recommend that you speak to your doctor, and maybe you could get some help. If you're really having a difficult time, speak to your doctor. Maybe they can refer you to a counselor. It's really important when you are living with a chronically ill spouse that you take care of yourself. So, first things first, you got to do that. Just a quick recap. My husband was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer 30 years ago. We had a dairy farm. It was just the two of us. We had a 2-year-old toddler, and he just was diagnosed out of the blue. He just went for a checkup, and they did blood work, and they found out that he had blood cancer. So our life has kind of been hectic in those last 30 years. I had a lot on my plate at times, and I'm just going to talk about some of the things that have helped me deal with it, because there have been times where it's been really tough. Now, everybody's journey is different. You should never compare yours to mine or to anybody else's. I learned that a very long time ago. When my husband was first diagnosed, we did not have the internet. We didn't have cell phones, I don't think, then. And I kept this piece of advice that his hematologist told me many, many years ago when the internet became a thing. Don't search Google. If you have a question, ask your primary physician, because medicine is so specialized today. What works for one might not work for somebody else. So if you want to know about your particular illness, ask your doctor. Don't ask Google. Don't ask me. Don't ask anybody else, because there are people out there that love to share like horror stories. And I know I've been down that rabbit hole, and it plays with your mind. It's very discouraging. It causes a lot of unnecessary stress. And trust me, we have been through some very, very dark times. And I'm still standing. And, I just hope that me sharing my story gives you some comfort and know that you can get through it as well. So he had a bone marrow transplant many years ago, was left with many, many complications from that transplant. Last August of 2023, out of the blue, was diagnosed with metastatic cancer. He has opted not to take treatment because we were told the treatment would probably shorten his life. Thankfully, right now, he is not showing any symptoms. He gets a CT scan every 3 months, and we are just doing our best to live in the moment and enjoy every day, but it is not easy. From past experience, every time he has a CT scan coming up, myself, my husband, my daughter, we all feel very anxious a few days before the scan, and we feel like very anxious until we get the report and find out, if the tumors have grown or if there's more of them. So thankfully, right now, he's fine. We're living our life as normally as we can. Of course, there's times when it creeps into your mind, and I have learned I just have to shut that off, because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Because if you start searching Google, if you start comparing notes with other people, it can get really scary and very overwhelming, and you don't need to waste your energy on worrying about the what ifs. Many years ago, probably shortly after he was diagnosed, we were dairy farmers, so my mom would come over in the morning to watch our daughter while I went to the barn. And normally I would be downstairs waiting for her so I could go to the barn. Well, I wasn't. And she came upstairs. She thought that I had fallen asleep and not gotten up. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. So they had to get the ambulance. I've had every test there was. saw a neurologist, and there's no explanation as to what happened, why I was like unable to move from my neck down. The only thing the doctors could come up with is stress. So stress is very real. Stress takes a toll on your body. And as somebody that has been living with, this huge dark cloud over my shoulder for that many years, I know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to share some things that hopefully help you. There are people out there that just love to, all they want to do is talk about the illness. And my husband fell down that trap for a while because he lived in the hospital at one point. His longest stay was 4 months straight. He's been in and out of the hospital for years. If we added it up, probably be like 5 years. In the last 30 years he spent in the hospital. But the longest stretch that he was in was 4 months. And we found when he came home that he was a different person, and all he wanted to talk about was his illness. And I understand that because that's all he was around him when he was in the hospital. But that's not healthy. And I would get upset and say, like, cancer's taken enough from us. Like, we're not gonna talk about it all the time. Like, I know it's in our life. We have to deal with it, but we have to also enjoy our life and our time together. And there's people that just love to talk about their illness. And recently we were at the hospital. He was going for a biopsy, and there were these 2 older ladies in the waiting room. And they were driving me insane because they were just comparing notes about their illness. And I texted my husband, he was sitting right beside me. I said, I have to get out of here, otherwise I'm going to lose it. It's difficult. Like, everybody's illness is different from the next person. And I just think that, constantly talking about it, constantly worrying about it, just like festers. You really have to think more on positive things. My husband, should have died 30 years ago. I always was very strong, and I believe in the power of positive thinking, the power of prayer. He should not be here. We've had to say goodbye to him at his bedside at least 3 times. I've seen things happen to him that some doctors never see in their career. I have seen some really awful things, experienced some awful things, and I'm here to tell you that you can get through it. Yes, it's really difficult when you're going through it, but you get through it. I made some notes because there are some important things that I want to share with you. So living with an ill spouse can take a toll on your own physical and emotional well-being, and the stress and responsibilities that come with caregiving can lead to weight gain and unhealthy eating habits. And that's what happened to me. I had so much stress, and I was running back and forth to the hospital, taking care of the farm, taking care of my daughter, doing my best, being a good wife. And, I just would eat a lot of like drive-through, and I would find comfort in sugar. Sugar is my vice. Some people turn to alcohol, some people turn to cigarettes, different things. For me, it was sugar. I've never been like a binge eater or somebody, that eats 3 or 4 hamburgers all at once. That's not me. I just make really poor decisions, and I eat sugar. So I've done a lot of work thinking about why is that. And I think that for me at the time, the act of going through the drive-through and getting, like junk food basically, that just calmed me in the moment. And it kind of just like pushed my feelings down, calmed my nerves. And that's how I coped. And, the weight came on, and I didn't notice the weight coming on. That's the honest truth. Like, I would look in the mirror and I wouldn't see the weight. Maybe I didn't want to see it, or maybe I was just like in such a fog from dealing with everything else. Like, I just didn't see it. I wish I would have had healthier coping mechanisms. I'm not going to be angry with myself because I did my very best to keep the family together, to keep the farm together, to keep everybody breathing. Like, I did the best that I could with what I knew at the time. And now that I'm older, and I think that it really took me for losing my mom last year. My dad died 7 years ago, mom died a year ago. I think that there was just a change in me after losing both parents that mentally I thought, wow, now like I'm the elder of the family. Like, I'm the next one in line to leave. Like when you're little and you have like your brothers and sisters, your aunts and uncles, your parents, your grandparents. Getting old just seems like so far away. But I think when I lost mom that I'm like, oh wow, like I'm getting close to getting like older. I really need to start taking care of myself. And that just seemed to click. And that's when I asked my doctor, could I take him up on that offer to work with his dietitian? I took a nutrition course online. My dietitian is not available to anybody else, but I urge you to ask your doctor. The course that I took was through my doctor, so it's not available to you either. But I'm sure if you ask your doctor, they can point you in the right direction. And watch my videos. I pretty much share everything that I learned. I'm using a balanced plate approach. I know there's all different types of ways to lose weight out there. I've tried them, and this is what has worked for me. It's taken me 11 months, but I've lost 25 pounds. For about 3 months, I didn't do anything because whenever we found out the news that the cancer was metastatic, and we were told last October that my husband had 3 months to live. Well, we're 10 months out and he's still here. So it just goes to show you how can I say this? Just have hope, think positive thoughts. Just try and not go down the rabbit hole of letting the disease or the illness just overrun everything in your life, because you don't want to go there. Trust me. I've been there. It's not a good place to be. The attention is always focused on the person with the illness, as it should be. However, it affects everybody in the house. And sometimes I think it's worse for the caregiver and the family, because the person that is dealing with the cancer, we'll say, has access to doctors, social workers, therapists, all those things. And a lot of times, they send them home from the hospital when they're still not, I think, strong enough, still dealing with things. And I get it that, they need the beds. It is proven, I think, that you heal better at home, but it causes a lot of anxiety for the caregiver and for the people in the house. Anytime my husband was in the hospital, that's when I slept, because I knew I didn't have to lay awake at night listening for him. Did I have to get the ambulance? Because there were so many times, at 2 a.m. and there'd be paramedics in the bedroom because he was going septic, or, his vitals were crashing. I had to get him helicoptered to the hospital. So whenever he was in the hospital, take that time for you to rest. And his hematologist told me that years ago. He said, go home. You can't do anything here. And I thought, well, I'm here to support my husband, but I get it now. Because he said, whenever he comes home, you're on 24/7. So I know I felt really, really guilty, not being at the hospital all of the time. But, we would call whenever we did get the internet, we would FaceTime. Don't feel bad, taking time away for yourself. I know what it's like. I know that you feel guilty. Maybe your partner maybe is laying a little bit of a guilt trip on you. But you have to think of it. What happens if one day you wake up and you can't move your body? Stress is a big deal. It can do so many things to your body, and we don't even know that it's doing it. And one of the things that it did for me was my weight gain. And now I got to work really hard to lose the weight. I feel like I have the will now to do it. Before, I don't think that I really wanted to lose the weight. For some reason, I think that I was just keeping it on as a buffer. I'm still working on that. I give myself therapy all the time. I like to really dive deep and think about my feelings. And I find that it's really helping to give myself a therapy session. That's what happens in the middle of the night whenever I can't sleep. I'll think about things, and then 3 hours later I'm still thinking, and then can't get to sleep. Never feel bad about how you feel. I have felt sad, angry, resentful. All those feelings are normal. Don't feel guilty about how you feel. You are entitled to your feelings. This miserable disease has robbed me of my dreams, and I am totally entitled to my feelings. I do not blame my husband. My husband didn't want this disease. And, I have seen him deal with such grace in such really dark, difficult times that I have learned from him. So never ever feel bad about how you feel, because the anger, the frustration, the fear, they're all genuine feelings. And if you stuff those feelings down, maybe you're going to end up with high blood pressure or something worse. It is what it is. I hate it when people say that, but it's true. It is what it is. And that's what I've come to believe, after 30 years of dealing with this. You would not recognize me if you would have met me in my 30s. I am a complete different person. I had so much anger and rage in me when I was in my 30s that if you would have looked at me sideways, I would have taken your head off. I guess I just didn't have the tools to cope. Until one day I was at my family doctor's and she asked me something and I just broke down and cried. And I had never done that before because I'm always, think that I have to show and be very strong. And she got crying. Oh, I'll always remember that. I'm sorry that I made her cry, but I'm glad that she made me cry because she asked me if I would consider going for counseling. And I didn't want to, but I agreed to it. And the first few sessions, I went to see a family doctor that turned into not a psychologist, or psychometrist. Somebody that listens to your feelings and helps you out. And the first few sessions, I was such a miserable person. I just sat there like a really brat, like a child, because I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to open up. And, my 50 minutes would go by and he'd hand me a card and he'd say, see you next week. He was just so kind and so understanding. And after about the third session, he finally cracked me, because it takes me a while to warm up to people, like to trust people. I guess I was just afraid of breaking down and letting all of my fears and feelings come out. And that was totally normal, because I think at the time I felt that if I broke down, I wouldn't be strong again. And, it may sound ridiculous, but again, I had to cope with and do with what I knew. So to me, my weight represents fear, anger, frustration, sadness, guilt, shame. And I'm tired of carrying the weight around. I'm tired of carrying all those feelings around. And I'm noticing as I'm losing the weight, I'm feeling lighter emotionally. And I think that I'm finally letting myself maybe grieve, let the feelings come out of me and just get lighter. And I don't feel the need that I have to analyze every feeling. It can just go on its own. So it's taken me 11 months to lose 25 pounds. I didn't put 25 pounds on overnight. So I'm proud that I'm doing it, that, if I lose 2 pounds in a month, I would never have said that before about myself. Because I always say you gotta lose 5 pounds, you gotta lose 10 pounds a month. But for the first time in my life, I'm proud of what I'm accomplishing with my weight, because I feel like I'm in control. There are days I still get the Werther's candies, I bought some Joe Louis last week, they're cupcakes, because he had a CT scan and I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out about my knee because it's not getting better. I got to go see an orthopedic surgeon. I'm thinking I can't afford to be laid up right now, because what if things turn bad with him? Like, I'm getting really tense and stressed again, and I'm trying to not go there. But lately, yes, I'm falling back into old patterns. So I got to rein them in. Like, it's a constant struggle. Like, every day is a struggle. It's all about making the right choices. What has helped me is speaking to a counselor or a doctor. I personally don't want to talk to anybody in my family about what I'm feeling, because I would feel that, yes, I know they love me, they want to help me, but I would feel like I could not be 100% honest, because maybe I'm afraid of being judged. And I also don't want them stressing, worrying about me. So that's why for me, it was always good to go to my doctor. I had him for probably about 10 years. I didn't go see him every week, like after a while, it'll be once, maybe every 3 or 4 months. I didn't feel like I had to continue going, but I kind of felt like he was so invested in what was happening in our life, because he could not believe what was going on. And then he kind of was interested, wanted to hear how my daughter was coping. So I think he just liked to check in with me, and, we would just chit chat. But sadly, when I lost my dad 7 years ago, he passed as well, and I was devastated. I thought, how can you leave me right now when one of the most important men in my life, my dad, just left me? Because my father was everything to me. He was so helpful, and so was my mother, helping us navigate this whole situation with my husband's illness. And I just felt abandoned. But what I have learned was I have the tools inside of me now. So whenever I'm feeling, anxious or stressed, I'll hear his voice in my head and I'll think, what would he tell me to do? And that does help me. If it's overwhelming for you, do not be ashamed to ask for help. I guess I was maybe ashamed. Maybe I just didn't want to admit that I needed an outlet. When you got to take care of somebody that's not well, when you are the breadwinner, when you have to like make sure that the house doesn't fall apart, that's a lot of stress on your shoulders. It only makes sense that you need to have some sort of an outlet to, just talk. And sometimes we would just talk about, the hay growing. It didn't always have to be about, how awful life was at the time. It was just a safe place where I could feel for 50 minutes that I could just breathe. I didn't have to worry about being judged. I didn't have to suppress my feelings. If I felt like crying, I could cry, because I've been told before by doctors, don't cry. Not my doctors, doctors that were taking care of my husband. Medicine has changed so much in the 30 years. It is so much more specialized now and tailored to the individual. And that's why it is so important that you only get your information from your provider and not listening to everybody else's horror stories. Because I think people just like to fester on that and maybe try and scare other people. I don't know. I don't think that's a healthy thing to do, to constantly just be reliving, rehashing things. So yeah, I use sugar to calm my nerves. Sugar was my way of calming myself, calming down. So I realized that I'm human. I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to have feelings. I'm allowed to be scared. I'm allowed to be angry. I'm not a superhero. Whatever you're feeling, it's okay. You don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to overanalyze. You're just human. But it's really important that you take care of your mental health. It is so, so important that you take care of you. Because if you don't start taking care of yourself today, then you're going to push it off tomorrow. You're going to push it off next week, next month, next year. I know, because I am the queen of procrastination. So learn from my mistakes. It has to come from within you. You can't do it for anybody else. At least that's how it works for me. My daughter would say, Mom, you need to take better care of yourself. I know. Why are you telling me? You don't need to tell me. People that are overweight, they don't need people lecturing them about what to eat, because most overweight people, I think, know what they should and shouldn't eat. You have to get to the root of the problem. And for me, it was coping with all the stress and anxiety and stuff. So you have to find what it is for you. And I really, really recommend that you contact your doctor and maybe see if you can talk to somebody. You can even do it virtually now on the computer. You don't have to see the person in person. You are 1000% entitled to feel however it is you feel. Don't ever be ashamed of your feelings. Research has shown that caregivers are at a higher risk of obesity due to the chronic stress they experience. This stress can trigger emotional eating as a coping mechanism, leading to weight gain over time. And that's what happened to me. I honestly don't remember me thinking, oh, I have to go up a size in my pants. My pants are too tight. I don't remember looking in the mirror, seeing that I put on all this weight. I guess I was living in denial, or I was living in the clouds or in a fog. I didn't notice it. On top of that, caregivers often neglect their own self-care while focusing on their spouse's needs. This can result in poor eating habits, such as grabbing quick and unhealthy meals on the go. And that is me. I became the queen of the drive-thru. The lack of time and energy to prepare nutritious meals can also contribute to weight gain and overall decline in health. It's important for caregivers to prioritize their own well-being to better take care of their loved one. And that is true. That's what I'm saying. If you don't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of your loved one. I only recently figured that out. It's taken me 30 years. So learn from my mistakes. Remember, self-care is not selfish. It's essential for maintaining your own health while supporting your ill spouse. Seek support from friends, family, or a support group to help you through your challenging times. Do you have any specific questions or any specific topics that you would like me to talk about weight loss, or if you're, living with somebody with a chronic illness? Let me know in the comments. I'm happy to share. This is not something that I like to talk about. It's a very painful time in my life. It's been more than half of my life. I'm turning 56 in a couple of days. And like, we've been dealing with this for 30 years, like pretty much most of our marriage. I'm a strong believer in going to the doctor at least once a year, getting your blood work done, getting a checkup, because my husband, his first diagnosis, that's how we found it. And we found out about these tumors in his lungs because he had a sinus infection, and the sinus doctor was feeling his throat. He found a lump here, did a CT scan, and we thought that it was just there and he was going to have radiation surgery. He would have been fine. The doctor wanted a PET scan, and that's when they found out that it had metastasized. For 3 months, I don't think I was myself, because anytime, he gets sick, it could even be with like a cold, I immediately go back to those dark days when he would end up like on a ventilator because he was so sick and had pneumonia. So it's kind of like, it takes me back to those dark times. So I would say from November, I don't think I felt like myself again until March. I still haven't grieved my mom. Like, I was just beginning to grieve my mom, and then we got this diagnosis. So I put my grief for mom in a box, and I'll deal with that later, because I just don't have the bandwidth right now to get through all of this. And I cannot tell you how difficult it is to live with this dark cloud over our head all the time, because we're constantly thinking, well, is today going to be the day? Like what's going to happen? Like, is he just going to wake up someday and be like in pain? And it's awful. It's just a really awful way to live. Some days the best I can do is just get dressed. And that's okay. I just heard somewhere that doctors now recommend you should have at least one day a week where you do absolutely nothing for your mental health, because we know we need our mental health good so that we take care of our body. Because if if our mental health is good, then we're going to exercise, and we're going to realize once we start exercising that we get those endorphins, we're going to feel good. So it's really, really important when you are a caregiver that you have somebody that can, help you, just so you can like unload your feelings. And that's why I don't like doing that with a friend or a family member. It's not that they don't want to help, they do, but they're too close to the situation, and I don't want them to worry. But also, if you're with like a doctor that, is a stranger, you're more apt to just really open up and be honest. And it's surprising how much that does help, because, as I got into it, I looked forward to those visits, and I just felt so much lighter, less anxious, able to cope. I guess in a way it just kind of recharged me. So I really, I recommend that, if you're having a difficult time, just speak to your doctor and see if maybe they can point you in the right direction. You have absolutely nothing to be embarrassed about. Don't ever feel guilty or ashamed of how you're feeling. Like I said, I've been angry, resentful. We didn't ask for this. We don't want this in our life. Like, why is it we've been dealing with this for 30 years? Like, go pick on somebody else. Like, those are all normal feelings, and you're entitled to them. I'm entitled to my feelings. So just remember that. I hope like me sharing this has helped you somewhat. I'm really sorry if you are going through a difficult time too. I know what it's like. Trust me, I do. I feel for you, and I want the best for you. If you want to catch up, I'll link my weight loss playlist. There are a few videos in there where I talk about, my struggles. I talk about emotional eating, how I'm trying to deal with that. Although lately, like, I'm honest with you, I'm having a difficult time right now because my knee has really got me stressed out, and I'm scared that I'm going to have surgery. So every day is a struggle. Like, just because I lost 25 pounds, like, I can see it's going to be a struggle for me to get to 26, and I just keep it on. Like, that's all I can do. Because like, maybe when I was 20 I could lose 5 pounds a month. While I'm realizing now at 50, almost 56, I can't. But maybe if I didn't have all this other stress in my life, I could. I don't know. Everybody's different. But the point is, I keep trying. I just keep on keeping on. If I have a slip up, then, the next hour or the next day, I'm going to get back on track. And for me, the key was realizing I'm getting older. My body has been so good to me. Like, I am so thankful for my body because it has kept me healthy. It has kept me going all these years whenever I could have developed some illness or something, and I haven't. So I'm very, very thankful for my body, and it's important to remember that. Like, don't be mad at yourself. Don't be mad at your body if you put weight on, if you're having a hard time, because you did your best with what you could at the time. When you know better, you do better, and just keep trying. Like, just keep getting back up and keep doing it, because that's what I'm doing. I don't have the magic answer. All I can tell you is what works for me, and just keep on keeping on. So thanks for hanging out with me today. Please click that subscribe button. It's free, and I'd love to have you here. I do fashion and healthy living videos, and yeah, we have a nice group of people here. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye.